Hello everyone, welcome to week 9. This is Brother Martin, and again this is HFED 340, our money management class. So let's take a look at where we stand. We're going to dive right in on the content side. You guys did a pretty good job last week. I'm going to try and be very clear on what I'm expecting for the assignments, so there's not any surprises about what should and shouldn't be submitted with each of those. This week's a little different. Normally we have around 110 points available each week. This week we have 130 points available. That is because, as you might have noticed, there's an extra assignment in there. So we have our normal 20-point quiz. We have the inspection checklist that you're going to do on your apartment or home that you live in. That's 30 points. And then we have the update of the budget sheet. So it's going to look familiar because as you use the budget over the last few weeks, you should have been tracking that information. It talks about that in week 5 when we address that issue. And then you're going to include the updated budget sheet and a paragraph talking about your goals, talking about where you're at, what's worked for you, and what hasn't. Then we have owning a home discussion. So the discussion portion, realize, is a big chunk this week. It's 50 points, and there's a lot of different parts to that, so we want to be very careful on how we do it. And then the teach a friend section, where again for 10 points you can let someone else know what it is that you learned. So let's dive right in and take a look. So if we click on the content tab and scroll down here to week 9. So again, you can see each activity and when it's due. So let's take a look at each one in turn. So on the reading, this whole week we're really focusing on buying a home. And part of that is understanding that in some cases it doesn't make sense to buy. So the first section is really looking at the benefits of buying versus renting. Now, according to the research, for most moderate to low-income families, their home is the single largest source of wealth that they have. This changes a little bit as people add investments, and hopefully many of you are looking to do that. And you have some kind of a 401k or retirement Roth IRA or something that you're using to retire on. But know that it's not always beneficial. In many really expensive metro areas, it may be cheaper to rent and to save money in other ways rather than to try and purchase a property just because of the sheer expense. So understand kind of what the benefits are, the drawbacks. Likewise, when you're an owner, you have expenses that you have to take care of, repairs on the property and taxes, insurance, and other things you don't have to worry about when you're the buyer, or the renter, excuse me. I said the buyer. The next section is understand what a real estate agent does, and knowing that there are certain things, types of analysis that the agent or the broker for that particular firm would handle on your behalf. And so look through each of those different points, and if you have questions, make sure that you ask those. But in general, it's just recognizing that as a real estate professional, they charge for their services. Usually there's a percentage fee that's based off of the sale of the home, and in some cases they'll ask you to sign a contract up front that limits how much, or basically it locks you into working with a particular realtor for a set period of time, often for at least 3 or 4 months at a time. The last section is understanding appraisals and inspections, and in this section is going to detail some of the different things that we look at on a home to make sure that it's safe, to make sure that it's livable, and to make sure that a potential buyer is aware of what possible concerns are so they can negotiate with that in the price. And you're going to do a practice inspection on one of the other assignments. So take the time to read through that. As always, take the quiz early rather than late, and then we can get into our different activities. Alright, so this first activity is the inspection checklist. It's activity number 3. Number 2, of course, is the quiz. So in the checklist, you need to realize that you are inspecting where you live right now, whether it's an apartment or whether it's a home. And the point of it is to try and identify what you would use if you were to try to sell that property. So you're imagining that you own it right now. Now, we've got a link up here to the checklist. It looks like this. It's got a whole bunch of different information on here on the Home Inspector Directory website they link you to, and the checklist is down here at the bottom. And they give you examples of things to look at. So when you're looking at the floors, you're asking, is there water staining, damage, are they sloping or slagging, are there loose boards, what are the issues? You're going to fill this information out in the checklist here. When you submit your assignment to show me that you've actually done the information and not just put in random things, you need to include a copy of your checklist. So you can print that out or save it as PDF or something and upload it. You can copy it and paste it into an Excel or Word document. However you do that, I need to see that you actually completed the checklist. Okay, so that should be easy to do because you're going to do it as part of your assignment anyway. So after you walk through and do the checklist on the property where you live, then you're going to respond to the following questions. Major emphasis that is asking you to organize all your responses into an essay. So we are not looking for bulleted answers. We're asking you to say, what am I going to say on this essay of my experiences in assessing a home for sale, or whatever you want to call it. And then you're gonna link those different things together. So they may not even be in this order necessarily, but just making sure that you answer each question. If you do answer them out of the particular order that you're in, make sure you give me good signposting so it's clear what it is that you're trying to address when you address that issue, because I want you to be successful in getting the points for it as well. Then after you answer the 6 questions that are associated there with step 2, then you're going to submit in step 3 the essay and the checklist to me so that I can see that you completed the assignment. Okay, so very clear. I need the checklist for you to get full points on the assignment here. Awesome. All right, so that's activity 3. Now activity 4, up here at the top, you can see is our budget update. So as it details, in week 5, it indicated that you were going to need to continue to keep track of your expenses. That's the whole point of a budget, is to see where you're at and identify if you were overspending in some areas, what you need to do to make adjustments. So in this particular assignment, you're going to submit an updated budget sheet, just like the one you used before, and that budget sheet should be filled out, and you're going to write a paragraph. So it says here, what do we got right here? Include a short paragraph identifying your financial goals, how the budget sheet is assisting with those goals. So I need the budget sheet and I need the paragraph talking about the goals, how it helped, what insights and reflections you've gained as you looked at how you spend, and maybe changes that you've had to make so far, and submit that. They say at least 1 paragraph. So if it takes you 2 paragraphs or 3 paragraphs to talk about it, then take 2 or 3 paragraphs to talk about it. Again, if you provide just minimal effort or minimal response, then the grade may reflect that. I'm not saying more is better, but it usually is very clear based on the amount of detail and information and things that you're giving, kind of where you're at with the assignment. So once you have submitted, in this case, 2 things once again, the paragraph talking about your goals in your budget and your observation and reflections on that, and 2, the actual budget sheet that shows how you've been tracking and how you've been spending for these last few weeks. All right, so that is that assignment, and that is worth 30 points. Now that one is due, if you'll notice on here, next Monday. So it's not due on Saturday, it's due on Monday. But don't let that bog down getting to other assignments. So just keep that in mind. Okay. Now the big one for this week is actually the discussion. And in the discussion, you're going to pretend that you have a house for sale, and you are going to try and buy a house from other students. And the timelines on this are really important. Okay, so it's going to require you to be responsive to one another, respectful from one another, and be engaged with that. So in part 1, so notice that your intro post is due by Tuesday, and the end is due by Saturday. Okay, so in part 1, you're going to identify which house you're going to sell. So you're going to market your home, or another one that you have information on, your family's home or whatever it is. You need to have some pictures or other details on the board, and post any information about the home you want to sell. So pictures, descriptions, and other information that would be beneficial to selling the home. So if you just write a little paragraph about what the house is, let's face it, probably nobody is actually going to want to buy a house that has just been described to them in 2 or 3 lines. That's not going to work. You need to tell us a little bit about where it is and why the location's nice, and show us some pictures. What are the good things, the bad things? So make sure that your post is interesting enough to actually attract a buyer. The next step is you're actually going to go on to the discussion boards and find a house that someone else has posted and select one that you want to buy. Now only one person should be trying to buy a house at a time. This requires both the buyer and the seller to be engaged in responding to one another. Now the buyer has the opportunity to ask questions. So if you want to know, what does the backyard look like? Or does this property have water rights? Or whatever it is, here's your opportunity to do that. So ask the questions, and we fully expect that the seller is going to respond to those questions so that you have the information you need in order to buy the house. If you really like a particular style of cabinetry or something, and that's not what they have, or if the carpet's very dated in the home, and you wanted to get a better picture of the carpet or whatever it is, and they fail to provide that information, then you're going to want to negotiate a lower price because they didn't, either they don't have what it is you're looking for, or they didn't provide it to you. So just be fair to one another. Now, I want to point out a couple things. It says, if you are unable to negotiate a purchase price with the seller by Wednesday at midnight, post 3 responses to other people's houses for sale asking questions about their house. This should be a last resort. In other words, you should be actively working with a buyer to get the home sold and to buy a house. And if it's likely this should only happen really if we have an odd number of students that have posted. So if this time rolls around and there's not actually a house for you to buy, then yes, in that case, one student might be posting on other people's posts, asking additional questions. But I shouldn't see 7 or 8 of you posting on someone else's. You should be responding to one another, choosing one house, and once you've chosen that particular home, making the purchase on it or working to make the purchase. So after you've picked your house and asked your questions, it's time to get the financing for it. So there's a couple of different links that it gives you on here. You have different mortgage options that you can check with on a bank or a credit union. So the idea is this. If you want to apply for a conventional mortgage, you would contact your bank or credit union and say, hello, I'd like to find out what your rates are on a conventional mortgage for 30 years or for 15 years or whatever it may be, and try to get an idea of how much it would cost for you. The second step is to look at closing costs. So closing costs can be negotiated between the buyer and seller. Those are expenses that are paid often to the escrow or title company, and closing costs can be for a variety of different reasons, in addition to the costs that the loan originator may have on top of it as well. So you should count on closing costs usually being around 15 to 20% often of the sale price of a property. That's not always the case. The more expensive the property is, the ratio of that can go down. But for most properties in that $150,000 to $250,000 range, it's usually a fairly significant portion. It's not uncommon for closing costs to be $6,000 to $8,000. So just to be aware of that. So on here it says think about to handle these and research the closing costs. So find out what it might cost you and think about how you would take care of them. The next step is to submit reply to the initial post, submit the mortgage resources you found, identifying the one you plan to use. You'd say, hey, I want to use an FHA loan, and negotiate closing costs with the seller and say, I think with the FHA loan it's going to cost me for this house $6,000 in closing costs, so I'd like to buy your house. Maybe you're asking $200,000. I would like to offer $198,000 and you cover closing costs or whatever it is. Okay, you're going to go back and forth between the two of you. I don't expect to have a whole bunch of them, but if you've got a compelling reason why the home should be less expensive or something, you need to post that and keep that in mind. So you're going to reply to that initial post, and then you're going to complete the negotiation process and sell the house. You're going to reply to the initial advertisement. The person who posted it will put a big sold in the subject line so that other students can see that the house has been sold, and they could click on the link and see what financing you used and what some of the discussion was and what you decided as far as the sale of the house came to. So it's a process, and it's one that you are very engaged in with one another, and that is due by Saturday. So we should see activity. Your initial post is due Tuesday. I should see a response to that and someone trying to work on the property by Wednesday, and we should see some back and forths from the two of you so that this is taken care of by the end of the week. So I hope that's clear for each of you. The next activity is the easiest one, and that is the teach a friend. The final one for this is 10 points. So find someone and teach them a little bit about the home buying process. Teach them about what you learned, whether it's about what a real estate agent does or what closing costs and escrow are, whatever it may be. Talk to them about that process, and maybe they can help you do the inspection on the property. I don't know. Figure something out. Have some fun with it, and then tell me about it. Tell me what you learned, what they learned, what was interesting, and maybe even what you would do differently about the next time. And that's it. So it's going to be a busy week, but I really want you to think about and focus on interacting with other students. That's the centerpiece of the work this week, is really interacting with other students on that discussion board. Let's have a lot of fun. It's a great opportunity, and I will see you on the boards.